Also the remote control. So what I will talk about in the next 15 minutes is about the grid and the changes in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania and the Baltics, but also in Ukraine. So you could call that the agenda. And you can notice I wasn't the best one in geography in school back in the days, but well, I think you could recognize what's going on here. So, how did it all start? So, you can see here the Baltics, again, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and they are connected to the Russian grid more or less ever since. But back in 2001, and you probably can see that on the screen better here, it's cut here, so February 2001, they put the connection on paper. So ever since February 2001, the BREL agreement was in place. So the BREL agreement was the contract which connected Russia, well, let's start with B, with Belarus, that's a B, Russia, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, where they agreed that they exchange power and ancillary services. This agreement was in place for many years and was auto-renewed every year in August. But for many years they decided this is not a good idea, so they got some independence over the last 20 years from the Russian grid. So there is an interconnector, two interconnectors up here in Estonia, Estlink 1 and 2, and they hit the media a few years ago when one of them was damaged by a ship which was plowing the anchor through the Baltic Sea. That was one of the Estlink connectors, and there are two more interconnectors. There is the Nordbalt link which connects Latvia to Sweden, and a third one, which is that one here, the Nordbalt, which connects Lithuania with Poland. But the grid there was always somehow under attack. And there was a big one in 2007 when the Estonian grid and the Estonian grid operator Elering was attacked by some hackers. So they decided that this must change. So the project, the Baltic Synchro, was instated, and I figured out that this number isn't right. So the Baltic Synchro project was awarded being a PCI, Project of Common Interest, by the European Commission in 2017, not in 2013. And the whole project here was about disconnecting the Baltic states from the Russian grid. And this was a 2 billion euros project which was concluded by the Baltic Synchro last year in February. And Navitasoft also played a part of the role here, because Navitasoft has provided the Baltic Balancing Capacity Market project, which was a 2 million euros project in the 2 billion euros whole project. And this BBCM project more or less is one tool where the whole ancillary services market system from these three countries is aggregated into one. And how this happened and when that happened, so let's go over in the next slide to my digital twin. But in February 2022, when Ukraine was attacked by the Russians, the Baltic states already figured out, and already decided, we don't want to exchange any power anymore with Russia. So the net import and export was zero from February 2022, but they still relied on the ancillary services from the Russian grid, from these huge hydropower plants at Russian rivers. And in February 2025, the Baltics disconnected from the Russian grid. And how did that happen? So basically on the 7th of February, they disconnected from the grid and run in island mode. And the island mode is one important step which ENTSUI requires if you want to connect yourself, your country basically, to the ENTSUI grid, to the Central European power grid. Then you need to prove that you can run your grid for one day on your own without any help. And this was the 8th of February when they achieved that. I will come back to that later in the Ukrainian scenario. So after one day in island mode, where they still had the lights on, and this was a very stressful fact, so I heard from Estonian, Latvian and Lithuanian contacts that auxiliary generators, they were sold out for weeks because they feared that they will have a problem. But it all went well. Then let's go over to Ukraine. So a few years earlier, similar as the Baltic grid, the Ukrainians had very powerful power lines to the Russian grid for many, many years. They had some 750 kilovolt power lines, so such a high voltage is not present somewhere in Central Europe. But they also had some AC links to the so-called Burstin Island. So they already were somehow connected to the European grid for the invasion. And again, some hack attacks over multiple years on the Ukrainian power grid. And on this very day, on the 24th of February, the day when the invasion started, was Power Grid Island Mode Day in Ukraine. And that was one of the reasons why the Baltic states were kind of afraid for this Island Mode Day, because they knew from the Ukrainian folks that on this very day something bad happened. But we all know it did not happen for the Baltic folks. So what did it do? The initial plan was to disconnect from the Russian grid on the 24th of February, then prove we as Ukrenergo can maintain the grid on our own, and then synchronize again with the Russian grid and do the rest of the work to do the desynchronization and the synchronization to the Europe grid eventually. But they, for obvious reason, did not reconnect to the Russian grid, but sped up the whole process of synchronizing to the European grid to a few weeks, which was still planned to be about a year. So that was very well done. And I have heard that Swiss grid guys, the APG guys, were very active in that progress and in the process to speed up the whole synchronization process. And kind of a strange thing, or kind of fun fact, if you can say so, they got over the years a lot of equipment from the Baltics. So the Baltic states got a lot of spare transformers and cables, and they sent it to Ukraine to improve the grid there. What else did they do? The whole power system is a lot more decentralized now. So whenever big power stations were hit by any kind of rockets, drones, whatever, they not necessarily built that up again, but decentralized the whole power production in order to make the grid more resilient. And it seems to be easier to add another power generator somewhere than fix a very big power plant somewhere else. And they use a hybrid market management system. So again, the Navitasoft part of it is that Navitasoft provides the market management system for the grid operator, for Ukrenergo. And over the years, the team noticed that after the invasion, the team from Ukrainian was a lot more eager to talk to us, talk to the team, and progress the implementation of the market management system, which was not so much the case before. And also what they do, what they did, is that they have a hybrid setup. So the software doesn't only run on premises, neither does only run on cloud. They have both a hybrid cloud on-premise solution, and also in some places and they run the servers in places where they have good internet connection and a good power supply, and all the servers around on a truck, which is something we could not imagine here. And yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for your attention. You can go to linktree/Siemens or scan the QR code. I have linked some more details about these two projects I have mentioned. My contact details about it is on that link. Thank you so much.